Hello, and welcome to Hold This Thought, a podcast where I invite you to hold on to thoughts that you might not have had before. Each week, I sit across from a new guest, and we talk life, ideas, and ponder the questions that make us think twice. I hope you enjoy the show.
It just came to me. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book?
Yeah. It can be religious or it can be life help. It could be fiction, something you read as a kid.
Favorite book? Honestly, I think the one book coming to mind is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Okay.
I think that was probably one of those first books that I read that gave the dynamic of real world and then just the creative spark or whimsical, whatever you want to call it, of this whole other world that is potentially there. I think that was one of those really cool books that I read when I was younger. And so when the movies came out, it was really good. It had that same, wonder to it. So I think I would put that in the realm of one of my favorite books.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis, right?
That's why I didn't say the author. I wasn't completely sure.
Yeah. I sometimes get it wrong too.
Is it Tolkien? I don't
think it's Tolkien.
I won't say the author at all.
I remember reading The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe as a kid. And C.S. Lewis was a gifted author because he did something exceptionally well. He wrote literature for adults and he wrote literature for children.
Yeah.
And some of it was fiction, some of it was nonfiction.
Right.
A lot of it was storytelling. Mm-hmm. And in a way, especially for that generation in the early to mid 1900s,
yeah,
he captured a wide range of audiences in a way that probably many other authors weren't able to do.
Yeah.
Dr. Seuss was very popular in the 1900s, but obviously he was geared towards children's books. Yeah. And what I specifically like about C.S. Lewis is that his children's books were approachable for teenagers, adults.
Yeah.
They were targeted towards a certain audience, but they were digestible by a wide range of people.
Right. But also just the ability to, it's almost it's not even almost, it's the gift of gab in written form, but be able to do that with a wide array of groups of individuals like you're talking about, be it kids or adults, capture their fascination, capture their imagination. That is a special skill because you have C.S. Lewis who can do that, like you were saying, but Dr. Seuss, great author, specific only to children. Like you won't hear any adult saying, "Hey, I want to do green eggs and ham today." Like it's not a thing that we talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
I agree that even though Dr. Seuss and C.S. Lewis are two very different authors,
yeah,
they both had a lot of success in writing their books and later adaptations to film and TV. I mean, I remember growing up in the late 90s, early thousands, and Dr. Seuss was not just movies, but it was like TV shows. Mm-hmm. And of course, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the subsequent books came out in film.
Yeah.
And those were successful, very successful films.
Very.
I think they, almost 100 years later from the time of writing, they captured a
whole new audience.
Yeah. You know, another book that was written 100 years before, well, maybe not 100 years before, but there have been multiple film adaptations since its writing, is, I'm blanking on the name. It's, We're Not in Kansas Anymore, Tap the Shoes, you go to.
Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, there you go. Wizard of Oz. Yeah. That was written, I think, before 1920. I don't have the exact date on top of my head, but that is another wildly successful narrative. I don't even know who wrote it, but the first film came out, it had to be in the 30s or 40s. I mean, it was very early, either black and white at that time, and has been
the movie.
The movie, yes.
Yeah. So when they went to the gray and white, black and white. When they went to the black and white, and then they did the Technicolor.
Yeah.
But just like, because the movies are out now, but it's interesting because when it all came out, I was looking. I can't speak for everyone else, but for myself, a new adaptation of the old movie. But then you find out there were movie rights taken and like lawyers were involved and everything else. So they couldn't do it. But what they did in the most recent movies is they follow the actual storyline properly, not properly, I would say closer, where the ruby red shoes that they used back in the 1940s or 50s, they did that just so it'll pop against the yellow brick road. Whereas here it was silver, and the silver shoes were actually what they used in the story. So it was just like weird, like nuances.
Rights to certain pieces of content. Is it like relate to who had the rights to include certain aspects of the?
Yeah. So all aspects of the original movie that was written back in the movie that was written or done back in the 1940s or 50s, every aspect of that movie had, legal, forms written on it where the lawyers
restrictions where it couldn't be reproduced. It was copyright infringement.
Like not one thing, down to the, I think even to the wings of the monkeys, or even the shoes, or every aspect of it, to the dress that Ariana Grande wore. Every aspect was like under lock and key. So they had to readapt everything, reimagine everything. And I think they did it very well. And so, but I think they also held closer to the original story, to what it was supposed to look like. And considering we're not in the 1950s anymore, it's, we're not in black and white, so we're not doing Technicolor. So everything would pop. Everything's in 4K now. And so how do you show things on a vibrant scale now?
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah.
I have some interest in that. One of my favorite movie franchises is James Bond. And James Bond has had its share of copyright infringement related court battles. The one that comes to mind is, I'm going through them right now kind of slowly. When I can, I'm rewatching all of them. But it's Never Say Never Again. Mm-hmm. It's 1970. I'm going to be wrong, but I think it's like 1977 or 71. It's in the 70s, or very on the edge of the 70s. Mm-hmm. And Sean Connery returns to the role after Roger Moore has done like 6 or 7 movies at this point.
Yeah.
It might be actually early 80s. And the plot and the story from Never Say Never Again is very similar to the story of Dr. No, which is the original James Bond film by Eon Productions in, 1959 or 1962, somewhere in that range, plus or minus 5 years. And the reason it was remade is because there's this whole legal battle of this person had rights to this specific story, and I don't know all the producers and directors' names, but I looked it up because I was so interested by it, because it's one of my favorite franchises. I love the gadgets. I love the spy. He always gets out of the circumstances. The Bond villains always spend 10 minutes explaining how they're going to bring him to his demise, and he escapes. But I just remember he came back for the role as a very old man, and that one film, and there's another one from the 50s that has a similar plot to Casino Royale from 2006, which was the first Daniel Craig film. Those two are kind of standalones in that they were built by a separate production studio, and they're not canonized. And some fun facts for the James Bond fans, such as myself, the intro to Never Say Never Again does not use the traditional James Bond score. Da-na, da-na, da-da-na, da-na, da-na, because that's a trademarked soundtrack by Eon Adaptations, I think is the name of the company. And so even though this one individual or small group that had the rights to this story or this narrative wanted to create the film, they couldn't use that specific score. They couldn't use the name, I think it's Blofeld is the villain's name. He's the bald guy with the cat. He appears in a lot of films.
Yeah.
They show him being dispatched by James Bond, but they can't use his name because that's another trademarked item. What else? Oh, the reason they named it Never Say Never Again is because Sean Connery said, I'll never go back to a James Bond movie. And then he goes back like 10 years or 12 years after, finishing his time as James Bond.
Yeah.
And
hey, gotcha.
When asked, what should we name it? And he's like, I guess his input was, let's name it Never Say Never Again, because I never said I would do James Bond again.
Right.
And that's why they named it that. It's just, it's interesting, the world of IP and copyright infringement and what people have rights to. And as consumers, a lot of times we don't maybe see behind the scenes of, we just see the final product, the what's being produced. And I was reading recently, just to hit a tangent off that, there's a lot in the AI world with people creating images from really what the AI is sourcing billions of data points across the internet.
Yeah.
And they use that to create images. And, you hit a boundary or you get close to a border of generating content that is based off of copyright characters. For instance, Spider-Man, one of my favorite superheroes. I can't, use AI to create an image of Spider-Man and then, make a brand off of that, even though I didn't use the exact artwork that's licensed by Disney and Marvel, because the image and the likeness is similar, almost identical. If you're using AI to create it, it's still trademark protected. Yeah. And so, the world of copyright infringement and IP rights is vast, all the way from film and production to comic books to TV shows to video games to art to music. Yeah. It's and it's a two-sided coin. There's a lot of reasons why it's good to have that in place. People who created an idea, created a character, created a song, created a movie, created a book, their intellectual property is protected. And there are some caveats. You can use certain images, or like Spider-Man, for instance, you can use that as a form of, I don't know the exact legal word. Again, this is just me riffing a little bit, but I think it's like you can comment on it, you can criticize it, you can use it in satire, you can use it at certain limited applications without it. You can't use it for like financial gain. Right. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah. And back to the James Bond example, obviously this standalone producer was making a film in the late 70s, early 80s, and he was going to make a film that would incur financial gain and hurt Eon Productions. And so there was a tightrope that the producer or the filmmaker had to walk in creating that film. And funny enough, actually, another fun fact I just remembered about that, the last Roger Moore, or second to last Roger Moore film, and that Sean Connery Never Say Never Again film, both aired in the same year, I believe a month or two apart. And so James Bond fans at the time, for the first and probably last time in history, were going to movie theaters and then picking which James Bond film they wanted to watch. Yeah. Whereas, it'd be like going to the theater and picking which Star Wars or which Lord of the Rings from two different studios you wanted to watch. And it was an interesting, what a time to be alive, man. Yeah. As a consumer, you're maybe not as concerned with all the legal implications behind the scenes. You're just thinking, oh my gosh, I get to see, if you're a fan like I am,
another great movie.
I get to see two James Bond films back to back.
I don't have to wait a year and a half.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, exactly. Which, you say that, and then you look at the historical.
It takes 5 or 7 years to get to the next movie.
Exactly. I was about to say, like after Roger Moore, there was Timothy Dalton for two films in 1987, 1989. I know those by heart because I'm watching those right now. I forget the names, but from 1989, it wasn't until 1995 or 1996, where we see Pierce Brosnan reprise the role in his first film. All of his films, which are great, have similar names, so I forget if it's either The World's Not Enough or Never Say Never Again or Die Another Day. And then after his last film in 2001 or 2002, we have that 4 to 5 year gap to Daniel Craig. Yeah. So long tangent about James Bond and copyright infringement aside, I'm really looking forward to the next James Bond that will come out in, oh gosh, I think they slated it for 2027.
And it's Daniel Craig again, right?
No. His last film was not Spectre, the one after Spectre. Yeah. Oh, so I'm fan. You don't know the names of the films. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, in my defense, there's 26 of them.
Hey, no judgment.
And I could probably name 12 or 15 of them, maybe not in order. But yeah, so his last film after Spectre, which I forget the name of, was in 2021 or 2022. And so they are hitting that traditional 5 to 6 year gap of finding the next actor. And it's probably strategic too. They're reprising the role for a new generation of viewers.
Yeah.
Take me, for instance. I was born in the 90s and I grew up loving the James Bond films of Pierce Brosnan and the adaptations to video games.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I like it. I have early memories on the Nintendo 64 playing GoldenEye.
Yeah.
On the Nintendo 64. And on the PlayStation 2, I had a game called, I think it was Nightfire. And another tangent. I'm a video gamer.
I remember GoldenEye.
Yeah.
I remember that one because I used to work at Sears and Roebuck, and so we used to sell video games.
Oh wow!
So there's a time when I worked in the kids department, we sold video games, and GoldenEye was huge then. So I would be selling that like crazy. So that's like the one video game of the Bond series that I remember that was popular big time.
There were probably other video games before that one that put movie adaptations into games that became popular. But in my opinion, that was the first game, probably not, but it's my opinion.
Yeah.
That was the first game to like put movie adaptations into on the map as like a major revenue source for the studio, entertainment extension in the same ecosystem for consumers.
Another one I would say would probably be Mortal Kombat.
Yes. Yeah.
That would be another one I would say. I think those two kind of set the movie adaptation into a game, let people be part of this. And Street Fighter actually. But Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter are very similar. And it's
the difference between, and I would argue between Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and then games like GoldenEye, James Bond GoldenEye, and even Lord of the Rings on the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Is that with these specific adaptations at this time, video game studios tapped into something powerful that has since then relatively been abandoned, which is crafting the game to be very similar to the movie. Like so much as the same score, the same pulling B-roll from the film and putting it in the title scene of the video game.
Yeah.
I know the Lord of the Rings games had that. The missions you're going on are replications of the story the characters go through on the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm not discrediting Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat in any way, but I think the powerful moment of capturing the audience was the adaptation of the narrative. Being a 12, 14-year-old kid and getting to live the adventure out through a video game of characters you've seen on a screen or a book you read. You know, we're going full circle. C.S. Lewis was a contemporary with J.R.R. Tolkien. They were friends. They would meet in a coffee shop and have meetings together. They were really close friends. That The Hobbit and the books that followed from Tolkien came out in the early 1900s, and now a century later, people are playing video games based off the works that he created. Yeah. And that was a special time for adaptations from movie to video games across a lot of franchises.
Definitely. Yeah, there was a lot of carryover, and even to the point where people are expecting the games to come through and give them that ability, if you will, to go into the virtual space, either mentally, because the 4K glasses or the what's the word I'm looking for?
Meta glasses.
The meta glasses to go into the virtual reality. Virtual reality glasses wasn't a thing, but they can basically do it mentally. People were looking forward to that and being part of the game aspect, like you were talking about, where if the game didn't meet the expectation, I forget what game it was, there was such a riot because the game,
probably Aragon.
I think it was Aragon.
What my favorite childhood book, by the way, which I never mentioned mine earlier, changed my world, opened my eyes to the world of fantasy, high fantasy. It's for those who don't know, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings, similar style, dragons and wizards and knights in armor.
I think it was Aragon, but it was so subpar.
And the movie too.
Yeah, everyone was up in arms.
Yeah,
up in arms about it. So yeah, I just remember that I was just like, oh, there's a following here that they will crucify you.
Yeah.
Before canceling was a thing, they will crucify you.
Canceling was the politically correct version.
Political correct,
today, but before then it was crucify.
Yeah, they'll crucify you.
Fun fact on Aragon, I'm a huge fan of the series, the books, and Christopher Paolini as an author. He is working with Disney now on a TV show series that follows the books. And I've seen some of his interviews and commentary on it. A part of the deal is like, hey, listen, guys, we're going to do this right this time.
Yeah.
Because the fans deserve that.
Oh, yeah.
And people who've never even read the book or seen the original movie deserve that. People who are going to be introduced to the content for the first time deserve a well-made product.
Yeah.
And I know there's constraints and restrictions that maybe are outside of my perspective when it comes to adapting source material to a film or to a TV show. But at the end of the day, the most successful films, TV shows, and video games are the ones that are the most faithful to the source material. The ones that follow as closely as possible to the key moments of the story, the character arcs, the plot development, the villain. I mean, in the original Aragon movie, they changed the color of the Arya's hair, which is one of the main characters in the book, because they thought it would appeal to more audiences or it would fit the character demographics better. And it's like, well, you got to realize your main audience at launch is going to be those who love the books.
Yeah.
And when you're making those changes because you think it's going to be better, you're going to lose your original audience. And one of the most powerful ways that content like that goes viral or is spoken of in high rapport is through word of mouth.
Yeah.
You can spend millions on advertising, promoting a movie, a book, a TV show, a song.
Yeah.
But when people are sharing it with positive feedback,
it's natural marketing.
It's
free marketing.
It's free marketing.
Yeah.
And it's like a fire.
Yeah.
It's going to spread rapidly. And they really shot themselves in the foot when they broke off from the source material with Aragon. I'm glad you brought it up. It's actually one of my favorite. I don't know if I have it on my set. I need to add it. It is one of my favorite books. Oh, here's a fun game. I want you to guess the oldest book on that shelf next to The Philosopher Thinking.
The oldest book on that shelf, or just
the oldest book on the entire set is in between The Philosopher Thinking and the edge of the bookcase. Just want you to guess the year just by looking at it. I don't remember which one it is, but I just have the date memorized, or I think I have it memorized. I'll have it close.
It's not an original book from back when it was created, correct?
It's an original copy.
It's an original copy.
Yeah. Or it might have been reprinted.
Yeah.
But the reprint is like maybe 5 or 10 years after the original copy. It's not like a reprint 60 years later. Like the book might have been written originally in 19X or 18X, but the copy on my shelf is within a 10-year margin of that number.
I would say it would be Now, I'm basing it on what I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. I would say it's the last book on the fifth book, the farthest away from the thinking sculpture.
Okay.
I would think it would be that one.
It might be. As I said, I don't actually remember which one it is. I just remember the number. It's been several months since I went and looked at them. I probably should have memorized which book it is and the number exactly.
Not as far as the year of printing.
Guess the year of printing.
The year of printing, I would put that in the 1850 to 1880 time frame.
I wish. No, it's not that old quite. That would be amazing if I had a book on my shelf that was 175 years old. I think the oldest book, and I need to memorize this. I think it's definitely one of those five between the philosopher and the other guy. But it's 1931, 1928, something in that range.
Yeah.
This is not going to age well, by the way, because I'm probably wrong, and I'll eventually go look at it again and get the right number. But I'll just say to give myself a margin of error, it's between 1920 and 1940. The oldest book in that section.
Gotcha.
And
watch it be like 1910.
Yeah, which is even more impressive, I guess.
You're like, oh dang.
Yeah, and I guess since we're looking at our bookshelf and taking our eyes away from each other, the camera actually, and we won't have to guess on that one. That is actually, it has a date printed on the outside of the camera. I think it's 1913 or 1917. So that camera is over 100 years old from when it was made. My mom collects antiques and she likes cameras specifically. And when she's like, "Hey, I'm not using this. You want that?" I was like, "Yeah, I want that. That's very cool."
Yeah.
Not that I love cameras, but it's like I'm filming a podcast. It's like it
has history.
It has history. It has history. Kind of like the movies and books we were talking about.
Definitely.
When things have history, I think they retain their value well.
Yeah.
There's probably an initial period. Every content form is different. Books, video games, TVs, songs.
It loses its value.
It's not as valuable for that first 10 to 20 to 40 years.
And then it comes back.
It comes back in style.
Yeah.
Like cars,
just like
music.
Clothes.
Just like clothes. I know. Have you noticed that parachute pants are back in?
Forget parachute pants. Let's talk about bell bottoms.
Is that maybe that's what I'm thinking of? That's when it's a
there's
wide.
There's the mom jeans.
Yeah.
That's a big one right now. Mm-hmm. For guys, there's not a lot of things that comes back. Parachute pants probably would be one that would be for us. But we don't typically have, like, if men have bad fashion in one decade, we just don't pick it back up ever.
Well, you say that, but like skinny pants were a thing for men, and I'm going to butcher it. Is it the 60s or 70s? And then they were back in the 2010s to 2018, 20s.
Yeah.
And now apparently they're out, but I don't have skinny pants. I wear slim fit. I know that's popular, but and in the 90s and early 2000s, it was baggy jeans and baggy pants.
Yeah.
But I can't wear baggy jeans and baggy pants.
It is comfortable.
It is comfortable.
It is comfortable.
That is the one winning argument.
Yeah.
I feel like it makes me look like a big rectangle though. If I wear a baggy pants and then maybe like more of a loose top sweatshirt, shirt or whatever.
But that's like the new style now.
I know. The teenagers and the people in their 20s are.
It's like the really loose, like hoodies, shirts, t-shirts, and then like these really oversized pants. And then the shoes now that are in fashion are grandfather shoes, or the dad shoes that we would all get when I was younger. It would be the shoes that you got to mow the lawn in.
Yeah. And
then now they're telling like the Jordans are out of style. They're saying all these like nice shoes are out of style. They're like, oh, that's the dad shoes. And you're like, dad shoes don't cost $130, $150, $200. They cost $30 or $40.
Yeah.
Which I don't get it. I don't get any of that.
I was volunteering at my church recently, and in the group I was volunteering in is a mixed range of people, older people, younger people. And there was a teenage girl in our group. Yeah. She's 17 years old, and she was wearing white New Balance, like think what a dad would wear mowing the lawn with white socks. She wasn't wearing the long white socks, but she was wearing.
They do that too.
She was wearing the white New Balances, and I looked at her. I said, "Those shoes 10 years ago were like your generation. People who were 16 to 25 would be like cracking jokes on someone wearing those shoes, and you're now wearing them as a fashion statement. It's mind-boggling to see how the trends flip." And I'm curious if the people who stay most attuned to the fashion trends are in that range of like 14, 15 years old to 25. Because it seems like the older you get in life, you get into your 30s, you get into your 40s, you're not jumping at every new fashion trend. You're maybe more set in what was the trend when you were in that age.
That, or you just want to be comfortable now.
Yeah.
Because I know like my wife, when we first got married, she would wear like the high heels, even to the point where stilettos was a thing. As soon as we had our first kid, she's like, dude, my feet hurt. And was like, I'll do flats. I was like, but do they look so good on you? She's like, yeah, I have no one to impress. I'm married. I have a kid now. I'm just trying to be comfortable now.
Yeah.
And so, but it's interesting, like those who stay in the fashion aspect of things is like, kind of like with what I do, I have to stay on top of things. And so I'm always in tune kind of what is and what is not. And especially when things don't make sense, I don't understand why they're in fashion. I'm like, you know what? You do you. I will not do that. I will not wear. I tried at one point. I considered in buying the dad shoes and wearing the knee-length white socks, the tube socks, try to be fashionable. I was like, I can't do it. Yeah. I can't. I mean, my peers will start cracking on me again. And it's going to be like 25 years later. I can't do that.
Let's talk about that actually with what you do. You work in the event planning space and you work with all different types of clients. Yeah. Planning events, weddings, special occasions. How'd you get into that? Why do you do it?
So it kind of it was by happenstance, to be completely honest. Growing up in a Indian household, you have siblings and cousins and friends that when you are doing a birthday party, when you're doing an event, growing up, when we were just having like meetings at our houses, you are just expected to do things. You're expected just to walk in and take care of things. And so when my siblings were getting married, when my friends were getting married, I got pulled into taking care of certain areas of the logistics of planning the different events. And so it kind of just happened. And in doing that, I realized the chaos that happens with every event that everyone seems to get overwhelmed by. I never got overwhelmed by it. I just looked at it as a job, had to get something done, look at it as a situation that needed to be handled, work it, and just deliver a final product, be it for, whatever it was for. And so I kind of got into that space where now I do it as a business and I do weddings, specifically more South Asian weddings, and corporate events, all the way doing both of them, and just handling every aspect of the client's needs, and just being that person for them, kind of, seeing, delivering my expertise for all of it. And so that's kind of how that's a quick, synopsis, if you will, of how I just got in there, because my background isn't really traditional. There's no entrance. Like in law, you had to take the bar to be a lawyer. To be a doctor, you had to pass your boards. To be a pharmacist, you had to pass boards. Like all these, there's entrances. In event planning, there is no real entrance into the industry. It's experience. By chance, my background is business. I got my MBA in project management. So it kind of has more meat to it than just, hey, I like balloons and I like glitter.
Yeah.
Let me do your event. There's actually a rhyme and a reason why I do what I do. Yeah. And so I think through things differently. So,
yeah. It sounds like you found something you're passionate about. You have a MBA, which is like no small feat. Congratulations.
Thank you.
By the way, in project management.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe after working in that field for a while, you decide to pivot like, hey, I'm maybe naturally more gifted in hospitality, and I want to pursue something in that field. And to touch on something here, I think a lot of people feel maybe that they're locked into a career choice. If I go to school and I choose a major, I'm locked into doing that thing for the rest of my life. But I would argue that we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves as many times as we want in life.
Yeah.
We're not locked into any one thing.
Yeah.
I've moved jobs multiple times in my life. I've started school and stopped school. And I think it's powerful that even though you spend a lot of time and effort in pursuing a certain direction in life, it's okay to change your mind and switch to something else.
So the funny story is I didn't have the opportunity to work as a project manager.
Okay.
Because after I got my MBA, the industry, the project management world was kind of in flux. It was during the recession. And so every job that I was getting interviews for a project manager role, they were looking for individuals that had 5-10 years of experience, even though it was listed as an entry-level position. But they wanted 5 to 10 years of experience. And even though I told them, I was like, I'm willing to take a pay cut. Because to me, when you're coming into the industry with 0 years of experience, you can't demand the money. I can ask for the role for less money. I can get the experience, and then we can revisit in 2-3 years at that point. But no one wanted that. They wanted to get people with experience to hit the ground running and then pay less to them. When in reality, back then, we're talking about 15 years ago, project managers starting off could get like $140,000 a year. And then if you have your PMP license, you can get more experience. It just adds on to itself. I'm like, you can pay me less. I don't care. I'm just looking for the experience right now. So when that wasn't happening, I had to pivot. And so when I started looking into, there's the licensing organization is called the Project Management Institute, PMI.
Yeah, I actually have that certification.
Oh, you do? You have a PMP certification?
Yeah. I did that in 2024 or 5.
Yeah.
I think 2024. And funny enough, I never landed a job in project management either, even though I had the experience to sit for the PMP. You have to prove strenuously experience in managing projects. And I was able to do that with my work experience at UPS. Yeah. But
and then take the test.
Yes.
To say you know the information.
To know the information, yeah. You have to study. It's not maybe quite as intense as boards or the bar, but it's
still intense.
It's like a capstone exam for a college course. It's a long test and it's a lot of studying.
Yeah. And so I couldn't sit for that. But when I looked into what do I need to do to get my PMP, when I realized what the PMI Project Management Institute deemed as a project, I'm like, oh, I just need to be able to write steps down and define what is happening from start to end and give you all the definitions. I was like, let me go create my own experience. That's how me starting my own business started out. Yeah. I was like, okay, I don't need to start something grand, like an IT company or a Fortune 500, company, or go into fintech. Let me do what I know, what I've been doing, casually helping friends and family out, because it is all projects. Every one of them is a project when it comes down to event planning. I was like, all right, I'll create my own experience. And then one day I will write it all down and go for the PMP. At this point, I'm just like, I don't know if I'll write all the experiences down to get the PMP now, but I have these years of experience now. If I want that certification now to go back into the IT world to be a project manager, I could. And I have that 15 years of experience. Yeah. And so, but yeah.
I love that how when you were looking for the on-ramp into that field, there were such large barriers to entry. So you created your own on-ramp. Yeah. You decided that I'm going to prove my work experience through something I'm going to build myself. Yeah. And I think that's incredible, because a lot of people, whether it's project management or any other career field for instance. I know in today's job market, what you shared is not unique just to project management. Yeah. Companies are looking for 2 to 3 years or 3 to 5 years in XYZ experience, and college graduates are coming out of their undergrad at 22, or grad students are coming out of their graduate degree at 24, 25, 26, and they're like, I don't have this experience. I did this internship, or I worked here when I was in high school, but and it seems like there is definitely a disconnect between what companies are across the spectrum, what companies are requesting for in work experience, and into what is actually been achieved by the people that are in those roles, filling for those positions.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found when I was studying for my PMP and really assessing my own career and thinking, do I have the experience in this, is my role, which changed several times while I was at UPS, was never a project manager role or a project coordinator role.
Right.
I had other roles, but I realized after looking back on my 6-year career there, I did so many different project management projects during my time there. And I reshaped how I thought about it. And not just like, I made this up. Like I submitted this through an approval process through the PMI with an audit on your application, and it was accepted. And so I rethought about the work I had done, the achievements and accomplishments I had done. And I thought, okay, what did I actually do? Okay, I implemented this solution alongside my normal duties. I did this extra thing in this 6-month window. Okay, what was my scope? It was this, this, and this. What were my key deliverables that I delivered? Okay, it was this, this, and this. What was my budget? Okay, it was this, this, and this. I put all that in the form, and okay, boom, that's one of my 5 projects that I'm submitting to sit for this test. And I share that example to say, for those who might be coming out of college or looking to do a career pivot and think, I don't have the requirements to make this jump. I don't have the requested experience to land this role. I would challenge you being the population at whole, to rethink your experience in life as, how did what I've already done, I think that makes sense. How did the actions and the activities and the work I've already accomplished, how can that translate into real experience for the role I'm looking for, or the shift I'm looking to make, or the career pivot I'm looking to execute in life? And I was able to do that, and successfully, I would say, to sit for the test. And as I mentioned, I never actually landed the PMP role, the project manager role. After that, shortly after finishing, I landed a role that I thought would have a lot of project management duties in it, but it ended up being a little more sales focused. And after a short time there, I just decided it wasn't the best fit. And then sometime later, I landed at doing this. And so all that to say, you can reinvent yourself. You can pivot. You can decide after 10 years, I don't want to do this anymore. You can decide after 3 years, I don't want to do this anymore. I thought I would enjoy this, but it's not something I'm passionate about. And just because you have a degree in something doesn't mean you have to do that thing for the rest of your life. Many people working in the workforce have degrees in one thing and work in an entirely different definitely specter of society.
Because there's so much to be said about being able to be creative in what you're doing. Speaking to what you're saying, you graduate with a finance degree, you graduate with a engineering degree. I can't tell you how many people I've crossed paths with who have a finance degree, engineering degree. They went to school to be a doctor, and now they're like, I didn't like that. I did not enjoy. I feel sorry for the person who went to school to be a doctor, because you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars
usually.
And I'm like, and now you just realize now you don't like body fluids. I'm like, I wish you would have found that out hundreds of thousands of dollars ago. But now they're just like,
they feel stuck.
But like, I know people who have gone, like for instance, people have gone into pharmacy and got a PharmD degree. They have this job, but then they don't really like dealing in the hospital setting. They don't really like dealing with the retail selling. But there's an aspect of pharmacy that they do enjoy. So they work with pharmaceutical companies now to sell the drugs and whatever to companies. And so like they've pivoted in a different way, still utilizing what their background is, but they found something that they're more passionate about, not so much either retail or hospital settings. But everyone, you just need to figure out where you're at, what you enjoy.
Yeah. I have an interesting take on that. There's an author by the name of Patrick Lencioni. He's written several books. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team might be one of his most famous books, The Ideal Team Player. But his most recent, or one of his most recent books that I am absolutely captivated by and has reshaped my perspective of work is called The 6 Types of Working Genius.
And I've actually just recently heard about that book.
Yeah. It shifted my focus and my understanding of the different types of work, really the stages of work that are required to complete any task.
Yeah.
Tasks that exist inside your home, like personal finance or managing a household, and task and workflow items that are in a business, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's a vast book, but to summarize, he defines 6 categories of work, and he asserts that 2 of those categories will naturally energize you. Mm-hmm. 2 of them you could do for a while, it's not too bad, and 2 absolutely drain the life out of you.
Yeah.
And for those who haven't read it, I highly recommend the book and the assessment. It's an incredible framework for understanding the type of work that you love doing. And what I like about it and I love personality type test as well, MBTI, Enneagram, DISC assessments, those are interesting as well. But what I like about this one specifically is that while those other ones relate to who you are as a person, this one relates specifically to the type of work you enjoy doing, that you get fulfillment from doing. And then conversely, the type of work that drains you, that if you had to do every day, it would suck the life out of your bones.
Yeah.
And so I share that to say, when deciding to launch this podcast, I pushed the workload as much as I could anticipate of what this would require through the lens of the 6 types of working genius. And I ran it against my strengths. And I said, okay, what work will be required long-term to do this? And what I found is, in doing that mental exercise before deciding to launch this, I was able to start something that would lean into my working geniuses, which for those who are familiar is ideation and galvanization, and would require me to work in my working frustrations short term, but over the long term, I could outsource those down the road.
Yeah.
And I guess I just dropped 2 names. I should give a context. Let me see if I can do this briefly. There's 6 stages of work that Patrick Lencioni asserts in his book, and that work flows through all these stages. First is the stage of wonder. That's thinking, how could things be better? The next stage is ideation. That's creating ideas. Hey, we should do this to make that thing you wondered about better. Then there's the stage of discernment. That person takes the 10 ideas from the idea generator, says, hey, these 7 are actually not good. We couldn't execute these. And then they pick the 3 that are gold, and they decide, hey, let's move forward. These are good ideas. They discern those ideas. Then you have the galvanizer. That's the person who rallies the troops and enjoys bringing people together, recruiting, and just getting everybody marching to the same beat, the same drum. From galvanization, it moves to enablement, which is the people who love to receive the next task, and they love to come alongside the vision. They love to come along and be the support role and to carry out the orders. They get so much fulfillment out of being a troop in the army. And then the last role is tenacity. They derive value and joy off pushing things across the finish line. So that's a very broad explanation of the 6 types of working genius. And so mine being ideation, creating ideas, and galvanization, recruiting the troops. Just to pull back the curtain a little bit, part of the podcast is recruiting people to come on. I mean, and then, which is the galvanization component. That's a constant, never-ending process. I could outsource it, or I could do it myself. And I'm like, okay, I can do that long-term. It gives me fulfillment. It puts wind in my sails. I don't have an issue doing that.
Right.
And the other thing was idea generation. While I'm creating the podcast, every episode is a new idea. It's a new, fresh topic. It's a new conversation with someone interesting sitting across from me. And that will never get old to me.
Yeah.
And what I found when I was planning to do this podcast was that I could do this long term because it aligns with my working genius. Mm-hmm. And not that there's other things that wouldn't, but there were other reasons why I chose this. Something I'm passionate about. I believe every person sitting across from me has something impactful or important or powerful to share, no matter who they are.
Yeah.
And I share that long excerpt for this reason. When a high school student's picking a major, or when a college student's picking a job opening, or when someone's in the middle of their career trying to pivot into something else, I would argue that filtering what you're trying to do next, what your next step is, what your next goal is through the lens of the working genius. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's the most accurate. I believe in it. And I think it's actually a great framework for understanding work. And if someone was to do that, put what they're considering for their next steps through that framework, it would help them make a decision, an informed decision, before they actually get into the role, as you were talking about, with someone getting into pharmacy and maybe not liking certain aspects of it.
Yeah.
Doing that thought exercise will help people pick a career, pick a major, pick a career pivot, pick a transition, and set them up for a better success, because they won't find themselves backtracking or stuck with debt, or with feeling like they've already invested so much of their life into this avenue that it would be detrimental to turn back or to switch now. Because in a lot of regards, you do start over if you do a career pivot. Yeah. If you spend 10 years in operations and logistics, and then you jump into marketing, or you jump into project management, a lot of those skills do transfer. But in many cases, you're going to be switching back to the bottom of a totem pole, or maybe not an entry-level position, but you lose a lot of the tenure, the unspoken tenure that comes from being established in a certain field. And if you're going to make a decision that big, I think it's a healthy practice to think through that. And I would argue that the 6 Types of Working Genius is an excellent framework for making that informed and educated decision in a way where you don't look back and think, oh, I made a mistake.
Right. Yeah,
so
I can agree with that.
I guess tying all that back into your event planning.
Yeah.
You decided to acquire that experience for the project management role by starting something. You had mentioned before the show that one of the things you have come to discover and you value in running your business is creating a solution for people that's fair, that feels just, that's when it comes to pricing and the services that you provide. Tell me about why that's impactful for you and what it means to you.
So for me, I don't like people being taken advantage of. Now it's interesting you say pricing and everything else, because when it comes down to it, our time is valuable. So my pricing for things is not, it costs $5 for me to do what I do. There is a price to pay, yes. However, you will know what you're getting. You're going to know what you're getting out of my services, and I'll deliver on what I'm asking, or what you're asking of me. But one of the reasons why I got into what I did, and I'll give you an example of, and so I said before, I used to do it for siblings and friends and stuff like that. One of my friends, he was getting married, and he's an individual that him and his wife got this. It was a South Indian wedding, and so Indian weddings are just boisterous.
They last several days, don't they? Normally,
so Hindu weddings will last several days.
Okay.
Christian weddings typically will last one day. Now, depending on what, if you're different Christian groups will do maybe one day, maybe 2 days. Hindu weddings can go 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 days even. So it really depends what you're talking about. And so for his, it's a Christian wedding. And then they were dropping tens of thousands of dollars for the wedding. And so he asked me to be part of it. He wanted me to do I do music as well. So he wanted me to do the worship for the ceremony. So we go through the rehearsal, and then we check out the rehearsal, the reception venue, which is right next door to this. His wedding was happening in a synagogue up in Michigan. So we walk into the reception hall, and it's myself and a bunch of his groomsmen and some of the bridesmaids. We walk in first and look at this reception hall, and I'm not even exaggerating. It looked like Pepto-Bismol in all different shades had exploded across the room, like from the swag to the table linens to the linens on the table, like the flowers, all of it, different shades of Pepto-Bismol pink. And it's not my wedding, so I'm just like, oh, to each their own, like whatever. I thought he had better taste. And so I'm just keeping my comments to myself and everything else. And then he walks in, and so he's the pastor's son. Typically, pastor's kids are to themselves, pretty, good language. They don't really cuss, especially in front of other like Christians or in public. If they cuss to their siblings or spouses or really, really close friends. He walked in, he starts cussing. He is pissed. And so when he does that is when I'm like, I give the sigh of relief. I'm like, okay, I'm glad to know you don't have really bad taste. And so he's like, this is not what I ordered. And so I'm like, what do you mean this is not what you ordered? And so he shows me a picture, and the picture looked like a very elegant, very well put together design for a reception hall. It is not what we see. And so it's the day before his wedding, and I tell him, I was like, give me the picture. I'll handle it for you. And he's like, Peter, you don't understand. The wedding's tomorrow, and this is what I have. I was like, no, you go home. You get rest. It's your wedding day tomorrow. I will take care of this for you. Because one thing about me, I'm just like, I don't want people to feel like you've spent tens of thousands of dollars, and the product that you're getting is not even, we're not even talking about 50% there or 75% there or 40. Like it was, like there was that pink color in his design, but we're talking about, it was like pops with like random roses in the floral setting. That was it. Like none of the linens was this color. It was all like white.
It was a light accent of pink.
It was a light accent of pink.
And then the final product ended up being like
all pink.
A little girl's birthday party. Just
basically
pink everywhere.
Like I was like, oh, like you have no restraint on pink and ponies and all the things. So I told him, I was like, you go home, I'll handle this for you. And he's like, what are you talking about? How are you going to do that? I was like, don't worry about it. You get rest. I got you covered. And so he leaves. The bridal party's all there. And I take charge, and I tell them, I was like, tear everything down. And they're like, Peter, the wedding's tomorrow. I was like, don't worry about it. Tear everything down. They're like, but we have to call the designer. I was like, I know. Trust me on this. Tear it all down. So we broke down the stage. We took all the linens off the tables. We took the swag off, took every last piece off. Then I called the designer, and they're like, they pick up the phone. They're like, who is this? I was like, hi, my name is Peter. I'm calling on behalf of my friend who's getting married tomorrow. You are the designer for their reception decor. They're like, yeah. I was just like, that's not what they ordered. I see the picture that they ordered. What you delivered was not what they ordered and what they agreed upon, and the contract that they signed. They're like, well, that's all that we were able to do. I'm like, that's not acceptable. I'm sorry. They're like, well, there's nothing we can do. The wedding's tomorrow, and it's 12:30 in the morning the night before. I'm like, well, we have a problem. And they're like, what do you mean we have a problem? I was like, well, I don't have a problem. You have a problem. They're like, what's the problem? I'm like, I took it all down. And they are the longest pause. They're like, what do you mean? Like, stuck on stupid is like the least of their worries right now. They're like, what do you mean you took it down? I said, I took it all down because that's not what they ordered. They paid you tens of thousands of dollars. The product they received was not what they paid for. and we're not going to do that to them. I need you to come back in and fix it and give them what they paid for. They're like, we don't have time. I'm like, well, you have to make time now. And so they are pissed. They drive in 45 minutes later, and I'm standing right there. They're like, what happened? I'm like, I told you, this is not what they ordered. This is what they ordered. And I showed them the picture, and I was like, I know you have that as well. This is what they bought. I need you to deliver on what they paid for. And so they're cussing me out now. And I'm like, I don't care. I was like, my friend here who paid you like tens of thousands of dollars paid for this, and you tried to sideswipe them. I'm not going to have that. So keep in mind, this is up in Detroit. So that's part of who I am. I'm kind of, you get on my wrong side, I have a ghetto side that comes out real quick. So I'm like, we're not doing that. You're going to fix this. So they're cussing me out. I'm like, y'all have a good night. And when I come back tomorrow morning, I expect you to look right. And if it's not, I'll do it again. And they're looking at me. They're like, I wish you would. I'm like, try me. I really will. So you already know I did this once. I'll do it again. I don't care. So
what time was the wedding the next day?
The wedding itself was at 10 a.m. The reception is at 1 p.m.
So they have essentially almost 12 hours to fix it.
Yeah.
From 1 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yeah, really 11 because they have to be out of the reception hall by 12. And so, and if I came in the next morning, they had less time. So I was like, you better get it right the second time through or you're going to go through it one more time. So myself and everyone, like the groomsmen and the bridesmaids are mortified I'm doing this right now. I'm just like, they didn't pay for this. And so we all leave. And then the next morning I come in and I have to get there by 9 o'clock. So I go in like 10 minutes early. So I get there by 8:50 and I walk in the reception hall. I'm like, good. It's exactly what you're supposed to do. And so they're just walking out. They're exhausted. They're like, this is wrong. I was like, I agree. It was wrong of you to do what you did. I completely agree. And so wedding goes on. Reception starts walking in. My friend hasn't seen it yet. So he walks in. His jaw drops. He's like, how did you do that? I'm like, don't worry about it. I told you I was going to take care of you. He's like, but how did you change the entire reception hall? I was like, I told you I was going to take care of you. His brothers asked me, he's like, how did you do that? I was like, I tore it all apart. They're like, what? I'm like, I tore it all apart. And I made them come back in at 12 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. They're like, and they came. I'm like, they had no choice because it was their business on the line at that point. And so they came in, they fixed it. And no one else knew except for in the bridal party. No one else knew. And I was just like, we're not playing this game. So that kind of set the stage of just how I function in the business world. And as far as my own business, because I'm like, if you're going to pay tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're expecting, especially if you're giving your design input for stuff, you're expecting to receive at the bare minimum what you signed that contract for, at the bare minimum. Now, if the company or business goes above and beyond, that's great. That's just icing on the cake. But at least you should be getting what you're paying for at the base minimum, which it's weird to say. It's weird to say that should be an expectation, but that should be the expectation.
Yeah.
So.
I love how, even though, so you were the event coordinator for that wedding.
No,
you weren't.
I was not. I was the worship leader for the ceremony.
Okay. So you were the contracted music.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just kind of took charge.
I took charge
on behalf of your friend.
Yeah.
Because you saw an injustice playing out
Yeah.
and you wanted to make it right. No, I think that's great. A lot of people would, even though it's the most important day of their life, they would look at it and be like, oh my gosh, there's only 12 hours or 14 hours until our ceremony. I guess it's just going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But I like how you took charge, and it kind of, maybe it sparked something in you. Was this before you started your event planning? Yeah. Okay. So it might've been one of the stepping stones in sparking that passion to go into the field of event planning, because you probably found out that day that you enjoy making things right for people on their most important days, their weddings and special events.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I want to jump to religion as a whole. We were talking about, we're both Christian, and we were talking about before the show how I know several people of Indian heritage.
Yeah.
And what I've come to discover, which is very anecdotal, it's not empirical, is that in a lot of instances, and maybe all, or most rather, where an Indian family is from in India, because it's a huge country. A lot of Americans maybe don't realize it. I didn't realize it for many years. It's a huge country with over 1 billion people. For context, the U.S. has 340 million, 350 million, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And so they're 3 times the size in population.
Yeah.
And there is such a different demographic all over the country,
right,
from the food to the culture to the religion.
Yeah.
And we were talking before the show, I really was enjoying our conversation about how in certain pockets of India, you'll have a strong Christian presence. And in other pockets, you'll have a strong Muslim presence. And others, you'll have a strong Hindu presence.
Yeah.
And at least for the Christian side, I know a lot of that originated from St. Thomas as a missionary in the 1st century. So think like 70, 80, 90 AD.
Yeah.
Left the Near East, it's now the Middle East, or in that area where the Christian faith was multiplying. Yeah. He left there and went to India as a missionary, and really is responsible for the first, if not one of the first, opportunities to have brought the gospel of Christianity to India. Yeah. And from there, I know countless missionaries have gone after him and created a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And probably the same, although I'm not as familiar with the details, with Islam, there was probably Islamic emissaries at some point in history who left their countries of origin in the Middle East and came to India to spread the news of their faith. And so what you have is this interesting geographic, it's almost geographic in nature, where you have different pockets of the country where certain religions are more prominent in these areas versus others. And I'm curious on your take on that whole perspective. Why do, apart from where that maybe first message was received from those Islamic emissaries or missionaries, or the Christian missionaries, apart from that, why do certain sects of certain geographic really areas of the country tend to adopt one religion versus the others? And then why do it seems like from generation to generation, it almost seems like whatever the tradition that's been passed down from family member to family member is, for the most part, adopted over time. And there's oftentimes, especially in Hinduism and in Islam, and I'm really not sure about Christianity, but there's a lot of staying faithful to the tradition of what my parents and my grandparents and our ancestors followed. I'd love to get your perspective on that whole interesting geographic, religious-based, I don't even know how to finish the sentence. Take it away.
So honestly, when it comes down to the religious aspect of it, for families who are, Christian or Hindu or Islam, I think there's a lot of the component to what you're talking about. Like we are going to keep the faith, if you will, of our parents or our forefathers and what they did and what they believed. India as a whole, just like a lot of Eastern countries, is very familial. And so you have the family component that's a large driver for a lot of things. For religion is one, but also education, what you're going to do, who you're going to marry. There's a lot of that component as part of it. And so you have individuals who are raised in a family who are Hindu, who's Muslim, who's Christian, that they keep that religion still because our parents are that, or our grandparents are that. And so when you're talking about Christianity, my family, we were Christian. Now, we were Christian, but we've been only Christian, and I can only speak to one side of my family line. I know on my dad's side, we're Christian. We've been Christian for 11 generations. And so,
wow. For context, how many years approximately is that? I mean, I know generations can sometimes be defined in different terms, but if you had to like round it, how many?
If I'm going to round it, we're talking about anywhere between each generation being between 15 to 25 years. So if you want to do a quick math of that, you're talking about 150 years, 175 years or so.
Yeah.
And so, or a little bit more if you're going on the 25 side.
Yeah.
And so, we've been Christian for that many times. Now, there's different sects of Christianity. Obviously, there's, Catholicism, there's evangelicals, there's different, even in India, there's different sects of Christianity as well. So every family in and of themselves have been Christian to some dynamic way. But, every family, be it if they're Hindu or if they're Muslim, they're doing it for the family reasons. We don't want to upset our parents. We want to honor, because the honor system within the Indian family, within the Indian community is huge. Like we honor our elders.
And that's across religions.
Hindus,
Muslims, Christians.
So like with what I do, circling back to my business, yes, I do weddings, I do corporate events, and I do weddings. On the wedding side, I specialize in South Asian weddings. But when I do those weddings, I'm meeting individuals. We call them uncles and aunties. That's what we call them. People, I guess I'm kind of in that age range now, but people who are older, I still think I'm 25. But people who are older that, while we don't speak the same language, there's different dialects within the hundreds. And so there's a commonality of you give respect to your elders. And you just talk. There's a certain, familial aspect it's kind of ingrained in the family. So when we're talking to them, I'll call them uncle or auntie, or if they're even older, if they're like grandparent age, there's Hindi terms that I don't know Hindi, but there's terms I even talk to them, but I'll still give them the same respect. And just talking to them, and it's almost like because they see me, they know I'm Indian, they already expect the respect to be given. For example, this one, don't crucify me on this one. I believe it's more of an Indian tradition, but it is more a Hindu tradition where when you meet an elder, that you'll greet them, and then you'll touch and want their blessing by touching their feet. So that will happen a lot. So there's just different aspects that's there that is just very communal, that is expected if you're raised in it. If you're not, then you kind of get a by, kind of situation. When I say when you're not raised in it, I'm saying like you're not Indian. Like if you're seen and you're seen as brown, period, you're expected automatically to know
to follow certain social traditions.
Social traditions. Exactly.
It's funny you mentioned the blessing component, and it didn't involve feet, but I was, my wife and I were vacationing in Chicago with a good friend of mine and his wife, and they are Indian, and they're from the Hindu faith. And the wife is from, and I'm going to probably butcher the following phrases, but it's not out of disrespect, it's out of ignorance. The wife was from the area of where the Punjabi is very prevalent. And so we were at this restaurant, and she saw someone across the restaurant wearing the turban and went and talked to him. Well, it comes to find out, he's a member of Congress in India. He's also vacationing in Chicago. Yeah. And he came over to our table, spoke with us. He was very pleasant. And before he left, he placed his hand on each of our heads in a very intentional way. And, to a Westerner, you would think, okay, that's a little strange. But I kind of knew, okay, this is definitely something cultural, act normal, and
Act like you know what's going on.
Yeah. Act like you belong here. Right. And I wasn't doing that outwardly. I was, but inwardly I was like, okay, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
And she had explained it to me after. She's like, that's a blessing that an elder or someone of, maybe someone of importance would do to a member of their community. Yeah. Yes. And I was just so interested by that. And I think that Indian culture isn't the only one that shares that blessing given and blessing received from elder to younger person. It's also common in Japan. You know, you would bow to your elders. You would, there's a high respect in China as well. There's a high respect for your elders. But, in Japan, for instance, and I could be wrong about the exact country. I would like to think that I'm right, but we'll see if I get crucified, as you say, online. But the lower you would bow to an elder indicates the more level of respect.
Yeah.
And so if you were just to gently nod your head, that would be a normal greeting. But if you were to bow at the waist where you are almost parallel to the ground from the waist up and you're looking at the ground, that's a way to signify the most amount of respect, maybe for someone in a leadership role or a politician or a religious leader or even a grandfather or a patriarch of a family. That is a huge component there. And I think it's something that we miss in the West. Somewhere along the line that has been broken, and maybe it's just cultural traditions separating thousands of years of, being separated geographically. But in the West, there is not a consistent, there's not a consistent tradition of honoring in an intentional way our elders and showing respect. You find pockets where that's prevalent in Western culture, both in Europe and in North America, and even as far as Australia and in the Western world. But I think it's something that a lot of Eastern cultures do, that if we did it in the Western culture, it would probably make our society stronger. It would probably, people are always looking for the cure to violence or to all the problems of the world, homelessness, drug abuse, murder rates, child abuse. The list goes on, all the things that are wrong in our society. And I think that we misplace the importance of simple gestures like we always show respect to our elders. It's not something we do. It's a part of who we are. And it's something I admire about not just Indian culture across the religious components, but really across all Eastern cultures.
I mean, there's an aspect to it. Like, we were raised to honor our elders and give respect to those who are older than us, especially the older generation. That's all there, yes. But there is an actual aspect of, it's a love-hate relationship, honestly, where you hate that because the elders, when they come down to it, they will tell you what they think. Unprovoked, you're not asking their opinion. They're like, hey, you need to do better. You look like a bum. You're sitting here, you're wasting your life. They'll just start going off on you. And you didn't even ask for it, but it's kind of ingrained. And so there's a part of the culture that you hate, but it's weirdly enough, it's also part of the culture that you love, because you also know at the end of the day, they're just trying to help you out. They're looking out for you. Because when it comes down to it, like, for instance, like my wife and I, we have a group of friends that we were raised in the Indian church. And there's a lot about the Indian church that we love. There's a lot about the Indian church that we hate. And so a lot of us, we left the Indian church, but we go to an American church now. But there's aspects now that we miss. One of those aspects is the community aspect of it, is the fact of, if you break down the side of the road, they will drop anything in everything that they're doing. If they're cooking food, if they're in the middle of driving somewhere else, that they will come to you, take care of you. If your house burns down, I'm going to go like super far left. If your house burns down, then they'll be there to give you clothes, shelter. They'll look out for you. If you're in the hospital, they'll bring food to you. They'll come, they'll sit with you, make sure you're not alone. Like there's all this aspect. So there's a lot of good to it as well. There's the bad. The thing is you can't always get the good without the bad. So it's almost like you have to take it all.
Yeah.
You know, and so you can there's to some degree you can pick and choose what you want, but if you're going to want this aspect, you have to also understand you have to get the other aspect you have to get the other side of the coin as well.
Yeah.
So
that's a tremendous benefit of the communal living. It's almost a tribal mentality where we are part of the same tribe and we look out for one another. I'll just say, first example that comes to mind, I probably mention this in every episode, but I'm a pickleball player, and a part of that is you kind of join a community of pickleballers, and I'm just thinking about my pickleball community at my neighborhood courts.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, that's their only social group. They don't go to a church.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they don't go to any religious institutions. And so outside of work, that might be their only social group.
Yeah. And I would actually go one step further for guys, period. That's all they do. Mm-hmm. It's only what they engage in, be it pickleball or basketball or whatever it is. That's their only avenue of escape or just to get community. Whereas women, they'll do lunch dates, they'll do dinner dates, they'll
play dates with kids,
reading books, a book club or whatever. When they get older, they'll do mall walking clubs or whatever, you know, but for guys, we don't, we will, it's very easy. We might be social in the teen years and the 20s and maybe even the early 30s. But at one point or another, we just, for whatever reason, we just start isolating ourselves just because maybe we know too much. We've seen too much in our lifetimes and
we feel like we know too much.
There's that too. We feel like we know too much, but we've lived through life. We've seen both sides of the coin of people being real and honest and good. And also those relationships that have basically stabbed you in the back. And then you're just like, I'm done. So when you start meeting people, you're like, you're this person, you're that person. This is who you are kind of situation. So you start, I hate to say it, but we start having judgmental attitudes. And then we're like, it's easier for us just to not invest.
Yeah.
And so we'll isolate ourselves. But when you have a pickleball group, that's like the one time in the week where we're not in the house, in the four walls of our house, and we're getting out. And we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is good.
And back to the pickleball group, the point I was going to make related to the close-knit tribal community of a culture like the Indian culture is those people who belong to that one group and that one group only, they're probably not going to experience the same closeness of relationship. If someone in that group's house burns down, they might get a GoFundMe. It might get a couple $1,000s, maybe something.
A food gift card, maybe a meal train for a month or so, which is nice, but you compare and contrast that with someone who experiences the same tragic outcome in an Indian culture. And like you said, they're getting boxes of clothes. They're getting probably countless offers to come and live here or to stay with this relative. And relative is probably the wrong word. It might be someone you're not even related to. Right. If you're a part of, let's just use the church for an example, but it's probably also in Hindu and Islamic cultures as well. Yeah.
There's this generous, benevolent tribal community where people look out for one another.
Yeah.
And that is something I think is lost on not just the American culture, but on Western culture in general. Unless you belong to a very close-knit group, the majority of people are not in, they're not in a culture where they experience that same level of being able to lean on one another in times of hardship.
Yeah.
And that one cultural difference alone, I think, is a huge opportunity that's lost on Western culture, that as a tradition that's been passed down and Indian and other Eastern cultures is such a beautiful and incredible thing.
Yeah.
Before we get off India, I wanted to talk about this as well. We know from, maybe earlier than this, but from like 1400s, really, and through the early 1900s and mid 1900s, mostly European countries were expanding in sea travel and colonizing all over the globe.
Yeah.
You look at Africa, for instance.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone the other day, and they were mentioning they were a missionary at an orphanage in Mozambique. And she mentioned how she had to learn Portuguese. Why would someone have to learn Portuguese in Mozambique, which is at the southern tip of Africa?
Right.
It's because that country was colonized by Portugal at some point in history. And you find that same trend with French-speaking countries in Africa and really it's all over the world, in South America, Central America, and even as far as India with Great Britain. I read the other day that it was as early as 1600, they began to establish those trade routes. And then it slowly progressed over time into the 1800s, where they began to establish more and more of a foothold. For the history buffs out there, the East India Trading Company was a global presence. They had ships and interest all over the world. In the Caribbean, I mean, that's featured. It's featured in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. That's based off of a real company. And it was more than just shipping tea and shipping and receiving goods. It was a commerce company, yes, but it was actually a global, almost like ambassador network, but not in the best, like, healthy way. It was like, I don't want to say sending spies, but they were sending emissaries all over the world to engage in commerce for multiple centuries, up until the point where it eventually led to colonization, which a country claiming another country as its own property that has its own rights, its own culture, its own distinct background and history and heritage is, we look back in 2026 and we would say that's abysmal. But back then that was just the way the world worked. I'm curious your thought, being from Indian heritage, what are your thoughts on how Great Britain's presence and eventual colonization of India throughout the 17th all the way up into the 20th century, how that impacted the culture, both in the Christian pocket, but also just across Indian culture as a whole, how that impacted Indian heritage?
It's funny because the first thing I keep thinking of is when the Marvel movies came out, and then you had, Black Panther coming out, and we heard the term of colonizer. Every Indian I know, we're like, oh, they're the colonizers. And so it was hilarious. And so, but like, that's true to what happened. And so, like, I think for Indians, there's a lot of what our history is there that we have sadly lost. Just by the pure aspect of it being stolen from us. Not like intellectual property. I'm literally saying like aspects of who we are. Like the Kohinoor diamond that's in the crown in England. That's like an Indian diamond that we've lost, that we're trying to get back still to this day. And independence happened back in 1947 for India. And so it's like one of those things, like when the Taj Mahal was built, the Taj Mahal is actually a tomb for his wife. And so it's a mosque tomb for his wife. But when England left, they took out all the gold that was inset on the Taj Mahal. And the jewels. And so you have these aspects of Indian history that we know, that I grew up knowing about who we are and what we have, that we no longer have. And it's almost like, and so now you see, I remember thinking growing up, Indian, we grew up our family's coming from a third world country. We have nothing. But then Indians are the ones who are always sought out to be like the nurses, the doctors, the astrophysicists, all these things. And the two never made sense. And so when I started looking into it, you start to see we actually had a lot of stuff. We were just stolen from. You mentioned slavery. Slavery was a big thing. There's Indians who were also made slaves as well, taken over to the Caribbean. So you'll see places like in Guyana in South America, like there's a huge in the Caribbean. All these Indians were taken over there as slaves, and so they integrated into the culture there. So I know I have a friend who is Trinidadian that I literally told him because he was telling me his name, and I was just like, "Oh, you're Indian." He's like, "No, I'm not." I'm like, "No, really, you're Indian. Your name is Indian." He's like, "No, I'm from Trinidad." I'm like, so it's like, it's to the point.
But your ancestors were brought there.
They were brought there as slaves. And they never, they didn't put two and two together.
They didn't realize it because maybe they
lost the history. And so it's sad because we come from a country that is so rich in a lot of aspects. Now, granted, the trade routes, like you were mentioning, we got spices that way too. Like chili powder, that's how we got chili powder. Everyone knows Indian food to be spicy.
Listen though, one of my favorite spices, garam masala.
Yeah, garam masala. Yeah,
I probably said it wrong, but yeah, garam masala. It is.
So there's different variations of garam masala.
Okay.
It's all called the same, but every mom has their own mixture. Mm-hmm. If you go to the store, you have the most commercialized version, but the most authentic is if you go to an Indian mom, she will tell you what's in her spice mix that they blend together. But like all those spices, I mean, it's one thing to share knowledge. It's one thing to share information. It's another to take.
To conquer.
Yeah. That's something completely different.
It is.
And so I think that's this part of it where I think a lot of Indians are just still very angry that we have such a rich history that a lot of people just don't know. Because like when you asked me about it, I was like, oh yeah, there's that. And you're just like, it might be common for you guys to know, and you might think that everybody knows. Because in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, everyone knows about, the Kohinoor diamond. Everyone knows about the golden, about the Taj Mahal. Everyone knows this. But you're like,
a lot of Westerners don't.
I
learned all of that for the first time today.
Yeah, I was just like, and I think that goes to say like, it's just never spoken of, and so I mean,
I think the way we prevent history from repeating itself, which some would argue it's always destined to repeat itself, but a way in which we can combat that force is by making available in a widespread format information that, as I mentioned to you, that information is common to you. Yeah. It's just like you learn it from your family or from tradition passed down. A Westerner might not have any scope or any context for the implications. Yeah. In fact, a lot of Westerners might think, what's the big deal? They've been free for almost 75 years. Why does it matter now? Yeah. Well, it matters because almost 200 or 300 years of an entire nation, and I say entire nation, you're talking actually probably closer to 50 nations, plus or minus, over the course of that 1400 to 1800, 1900 period, where you had 5 to 10 European countries sending out people on ships to colonize and to not always conquer. Conquer is, more like murder, kill, set up your own government. Yeah. I would say it got more civilized for the time. Obviously, in today's terms, not civilized, where they would implement their own government and levy a tax versus, murdering everyone, which is a real historical event as well. Yeah. People used to just get murdered when a new ship would arrive. And I think it's healthy for us to spread what really happened, not in a way that's seeking revenge, but in a way that's spreading awareness so that it's not something we repeat. I mean, I know this is a big what if, but let's just take, for instance, World War II. The Allies won. Yeah. The Axis powers lost. What if the Axis powers had won? What if Nazi Germany had won the war,
completed their mission,
defeated Britain, which a lot of people argue was the gateway to the rest of the west of the world, and then colonized and conquered Canada, the United States? Our history in the West would be very different. Yeah. Our world would look very different. Yeah. And obviously we're glad that outcome didn't happen because of the atrocities of Nazi Germany and what they were doing and the evil that they were committing. But if that had happened, maybe Westerners would have a greater sense of realism for what the implications of colonization and what conquering feels like. Because many of us who are born in America, and maybe we don't even know who it was that came. I don't know who it was that came. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not from, my great-great-great-great-grandparents aren't from here. I would be Native American if that were the case.
Yeah.
Someone from Europe,
yeah,
Anglo-Saxon heritage, immigrated here, and from that bloodline, I was born here.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that same heritage or familial tradition passed down of what occurred. And I think me as an example applies to hundreds of millions of Americans throughout the country and hundreds of millions of Westerners throughout Europe and throughout the Western world as a whole.
Yeah.
And realizing, hey, these were actually really serious crimes.
Yeah. And
we shouldn't throw them under the rug. Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, we don't need to necessarily seek vengeance or revenge, but we need to talk about them in a light in which we realize they were bad and focus on an outcome and a future in which we make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually even go to a point of saying there's an aspect even for people who are from America that there is, because we're talking about history and knowing where you come from and knowing your background. Like there's an aspect to a lot of people in America that they have been here, like to your point, for generations, that now your term is I'm American. But do you know your history? And so like, and because you even said like if I was born and raised here, and we never immigrated, and we were just here, we would be Native American. But the truth of the matter is, America is a melting pot. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people don't know their background. They don't know their history, to the point where they'll just, like, for example, if you're talking about the Black community, there's Black community, and then there's the African American community.
And they're very different.
They're very different. Like the Black community, they've been here for generations. They don't know where they come from Africa. They don't know. So they've been here for so long, they attribute themselves to just the American Black culture. Then you have the African Americans.
Maybe they immigrated or their parents immigrated. And it's more recent.
They can do the line, the heritage. They're like, we come from Nigeria, we come from Kenya, we come from South, wherever they are, wherever it is, they can put the line there. They know. So that's why you have a lot of people now, all Americans, whoever they may be, doing 23andMe, doing the ancestry, because there's a part of us that we want to know where we come from. We want to know why we are the way we are. We want to have that. We want to belong to something more. That I think Western culture, American culture is very individualized, but we have a natural bent to wanting to belong to something bigger than us. And so we want to know where we come from. Like, where's our family from? Like, what's our history? Good, bad, and everything in between. We want to know where we come from. And so
it raises a deeper question, which is, we have history books.
Yeah.
And there's conflicted opinions on those that really can be summarized by history is written by the victor.
Yeah.
So how much of that is true versus propagandized or made into propaganda. I'll just put it that way. But apart from that, which is a whole rabbit trail that I don't think we have to get into today, people don't know where they come from.
Yeah.
And when they don't know where they come from, they lose an important part of their history, as you were saying. And that raises the question does knowing our heritage make us more knowledgeable? Sure. But does it make us more equipped, stronger, smarter, more informed, more educated? I don't know that there's an answer to that question. Does knowing my line back to whatever European origin it comes from, or really it's probably a mixture at this point, this many generations removed, and I haven't never done an ancestry test, so for context.
That's advice I don't. I kind of figure mine's gonna be just Indian.
So, but if I was to do something like that, would that make me more informed, and would it change my life and my perspective in a way that's meaningful? And then you take that example of me, one person, and you apply that to millions of people.
Yeah.
Would it change our society? Would it alter the course of our future by knowing? Or is it irrelevant? Some people would argue that it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter where I came from. And I'm not saying I have the answer, because I don't. I don't know that we know if it would be, in many ways, it would be beneficial to know I came from this region, and then you would learn about that culture.
Right.
And then you might stumble upon, this culture colonized these countries.
Right.
And then that would be a rabbit trail you followed in your ancestral path, and you learned something about the world. So there's that argument that maybe I'm 14% Portuguese, or maybe I'm 14% British, or 14% German. Oh, and then you learn about that culture at that time period, and then you could understand more about the world then.
I think there's an aspect of the history that is important, whether or not you're 14% Portuguese or, 2%, Icelandic or whatever. That's the aspect of your history. I don't know if it's that important. Is it important? Yes. But before there was TV, before there was anything else, learning of the family history was always shared by the stories. So you knew what your parents, your uncles and aunts, your grandparents, whoever it was, what they went through, what they learned. And so there's a sharing of knowledge that would always happen through the generations. And at some point or another, we just stopped sharing what our parents went through or what our grandparents went through for whatever reason. And I think there's a loss of knowledge that happened. I think there's a break of knowledge that happened. And I think that's sad, because there's a part of it where, for those who immigrated, let's talk about, the families that immigrated here from Europe on the Mayflower, or not the Mayflower, or whatever.
That might have been like one of the earliest.
That might have been one of the early ones,
moments. Yeah. But there's been
many
hundreds of ships, and
they came over and they're like, this is what we dealt with. Our families dealt with the plague. We lost this many people, or we went and learned this. We were these tradesmen, and that allowed us the ability to come over here because we were of a working class that they needed. And so just that history of knowing where you come from and what brought you here, like there's something to that would share, my family was part of the settlers that came here. We were blacksmiths, something they didn't have here, and we were needed. Or, we were craftsmen, we were carpenters, we were whatever, we were farmers, and they needed these trades here to survive. And so, like, one of those, like, you're sharing on the knowledge of who we were, in that kind of situation.
Yeah. So. It's funny you mentioned the blacksmith thing. At one point, I didn't do the full ancestry test, but I traced the last name Boatwright, which is my last name.
Yeah.
No W in the middle. And it was actually, to my knowledge, it's a surnames used to represent your trade or your profession.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago. And especially in the Anglo-Saxon culture. I'm not sure about everywhere else in the world, but in Europe and nearby, your surname would represent your profession. And boatwrights were shipbuilders. They would make and construct ships. And a part of that discovery process, I learned that a relative I never met, it might have been my paternal grandfather or his father before him removed legally the W from our name for whatever reason. No clue why. I didn't know him. And I've dealt with that my whole life. People spelling it wrong with the W in it. And like a lot of people deal with people misspelling their names. Yeah. And I always wondered, like, why do people put the W in there? And I realized it's because the origin of the word, boatwright, BOATWRIGHT, that was a profession. That was someone who would build and construct naval vessels.
Yeah.
And it's been years since I learned that fact, but even talking about it now, it's like, okay, maybe I should do this ancestry or whatever DNA tracing that is available now, because you do gain access to a history about yourself that, sure, you might think has no implications on who I am today. But the argument can be made that learning about where you and your ancestors come from,
it might answer some questions too.
It might answer some questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming on the show.
It was a pleasure. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. You gave me some thoughts worth holding on to. And I wanted to ask, with your events business, is there anywhere people can find more about you, book your services, anything like that?
Yeah. So I have a website. It is E&P. So E and spelled out E&P, the letters E&P .events. That's my website. Or on Instagram, it's again E&P, and then it's the _ events. So that's on Instagram as well. And so so we do corporate events, we do social events, we do weddings. I specialize in South Asian weddings, but I do all weddings. But yeah, and so I mean, if they need services, corporate, events or galas, employee appreciations, we take care of all of it. We have a lot of networks to make sure that the event is taken care of and you know what you're getting.
Before we go, do you have any closing thoughts on anything we talked about? Takeaways, life lessons, moments of impact?
Honestly, I think it's interesting the course of our conversation, because I was not expecting us to go this direction at all.
Yeah. That's the best. Those are the best conversations.
It really is. I think the main takeaway is, knowing your why, like who you are, your why, your background, where you come from, like what makes you tick, kind of situation. To your point of knowing your history, your lineage, it's interesting where the things that we struggle with today, if we knew our history or where we came from, it might answer some questions of, oh, that's why I act that way, or that's why I have this tick for this, or I function this way, or I enjoy it this way. Like it might answer a lot of questions that you never really understood why out of your entire family you function this way or that way. It might answer a lot of questions. So I thought that was pretty interesting from today's conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can be notified every week when we launch new episodes. I'll see you then.